about the lie in the third column. Security. I need her to stay to exist. Without her, I am nothing. Who's nothing? The perfect boyfriend could no longer exist if she leaves. Right? You'll get the feel of that when he does the theater of the lie. Also remember that up to page 64, the line that says we listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we were angry, all we've done up to page 64 is make considerations and questions. This is the first instruction. And I was told, don't go past any instruction until it's done. So we had done all this work with 1, 2, and 3. We got on our knees and we did the prayer. And he read what Mark read about resentment. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Have you done that? No. Go home and call me when you're done with that list. I came back with that list. My first list was big because that's what needed to come out. If your first list is small and that's what's coming out, that's what came out. You trust God with your list. And if you're a sponsor, don't edit anybody's inventory. That's playing God. If a big list needed to come out, that's what needed to come out. They said a prayer, they trust God that they trust God. You trust God that they trust God. Something's happened to them in 1, 2, and 3. I've had librarians who had a bigger list than criminals. Criminals do it all out here. Librarians do it all up here. Passive people have a lot bigger inventories than aggressive people. Aggressive people get it all out. You know, they'll just punch you. They'll just knock your ass out, right? Passive people go home and think about it for decade after decade and build volumes and, you know. Second instruction, second column. We asked ourselves why we were angry. He said, go home, take the first name off the list, put it on a piece of paper, don't worry about saving any space, and just let it flow. A, B, C, D, when they do this, when she did this, when she did that, when they didn't do this, when they did that, when they didn't say this. Next one, A, B, some you'll have 10, some you'll have 1. You don't need to be wordy. You don't need to put, I was walking down the street on June 4th, 1976, and he came up to me and said blah, 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 and then he punched me in the mouth. You just put, he punched me in the mouth. But you don't need to be general, too. He's a jerk. You should be a little more specific. He lied to me about blah, blah, blah. I'm going to throw an idea out there that might come true for some of you a little later. The first 2 columns are all lies. There's no truth in the first 2 columns. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So you go home and you do the second column on everybody. Then you come back and you'll find that in most cases we're going to look for 7 in here. Self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, personal relations, sex relations were hurt or threatened. So you were angry, you were burned up. Then they repeat themselves a little bit. On our list we said opposite each name, was it our self-esteem? We already got. There's a new one, security. Ambition they've already given us. Personal relations they've already given us. Sex relations. And where do you find pride? You find pride in the example all the way down at the bottom with the wife. So we found 7. Self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. So I just asked myself. I go home and I have these first 2 columns. I take the first name off the paper. I put it on a new piece of paper. Let's do 1 resentment per page of paper. Paper, don't be afraid of paper. Paper doesn't need to scare you. Do 1, if you have 10 resentments toward Charlie, that's going to be 10 pieces of paper, full pieces, back and front. I've seen people who try to take 10 resentments with 10 third columns crunched in together, no room for the 4th column because your ego doesn't want you to see the truth. So I take the first name off the list, Sally. The first lettered second column, I letter the second column, A, B, C, D, E. I take Sally, A, left me. Self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. Leave the back blank. If you can do the extended third column, great. If it's your first inventory and you get lost in the third column, fine. Just put the words. What areas of self were hurt, threatened, or interfered with? I usually find all 7. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Now, a lot of people will tell you, that the big book only says to write 3 columns. These guys that we know and love, who we used to go off on for many years until they changed their inventory, used to make the 4th column. Check. Here's how important the 4th column is. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 5 steps. 5 steps come from your clarity in the 4th column. Everything you need for the 5th step to be honest about your nature of the wrong. Everything you need for step 6. Everything you need for step 7. Everything you need for step 8. And everything you need for step 9 to go to somebody to be clear comes from the 4th column. My book doesn't say, was I selfish? Check. Was I dishonest? Check. It says, where was I dishonest? So after I've done the 3rd column on everybody, I come back to the book. It gives me some questions to answer. Is it plain to me that life that includes deep resentment leads only to futility and happiness? I believe that. Is it fatal? Blah, blah, blah. Question, question, question. Now they say turn back to the list at the bottom of 66, for it holds the key to the future. Now that sounds pretty important, doesn't it? That this next part of the inventory is going to be a key to your future. You're going to be prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. All I had done my whole life was the first 3 columns. We've begun to see the world and its people dominating us. How can we escape? This was our course. They give you a prayer to move from the 3rd column to the 4th column. This is a sick person like myself. Do you ever hear people in meetings refer to that prayer like, I needed to realize that he was a sick person, and then leave out, like me, so that they're kind of up here and that poor sick person is down here? They, like myself, are perhaps spiritually sick. I wouldn't treat a sick person this way. Personally, I would, actually. Yeah. And I have, right? I ask God to help me show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience I would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offends, we say to ourselves, this is a sick man like myself. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Blah, blah, blah. We avoid retaliation. Now, referring to the first 3 columns again, putting out of your mind what they did, look for your own mistakes. Now, here's the instructions for column 4. Where had I been selfish? Where had I been dishonest? Where have I been self-seeking? And where was I afraid? So I turn the page over. On the front, I have 1 resentment toward 1 person. The 3rd column, turn the page over and give myself the whole back of the page, selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid. And I start to write it out. I was selfish when I only cared about this. I was selfish when I was only concerned with this and this and this and this. I was self-seeking when I was only after this and this and this, and I wanted this, and I wanted her to be like this. And I look at 3 kinds of dishonesty. There's 3 kinds of dishonesty. There's outright lies. Honey, I've never cheated on you. There's lies of omission. That's where you don't say anything. It's just as dishonest as telling a lie. And then there's self-delusion. You'll see the self-delusion in the 3rd column. Write the biggest lie from the 3rd column under self-delusion, dishonesty. And where was I frightened? And if you're in your first inventory, you will see that when you think you're angry, it's really fear. Anger is fear. Anger is a mask to hide fear. I'd like to throw one more thing in there that I currently do that has once again, like the 3rd column, changed my whole experience with inventory. Came to me by myself. Nobody told me. Nobody suggested it. I was alone. I was in India. I was writing inventory, and this is what I did. And I had seen it a few times. For example, when Sally left me, and it affected all 7 areas of my life, and I've seen my part. I was selfish. I was dishonest. I was self-seeking. I was afraid. Once in a while, it used to dawn on me, holy moly, I'm not mad at her for leaving me. I'm mad at myself for driving her away with my selfishness, dishonesty, self-seeking, and fear. The first 2 columns turned into a lie. I now do that with every resentment. And here's the principle. Stay in the 4th column until you can rewrite the first 2. And you will find that every resentment is one toward yourself or God. You take those, leave them at the bottom of the 4th column. When you're all done with the 4th column, come back. You'll find about 5 or 10 toward yourself and 5 or 10 toward God. Take those and write 4 columns on those, and that will be an inventory. My last inventory I read to Mark, there was 35 pages of resentments. And we don't just work with the word resentment anymore. If you've been around for a while and you don't live with deep-seated resentment like you used to, use other words to generate your list. Let down by, discouraged with, jealous of. Because a lot of us in this room don't live with deep-seated resentment, but we still have more subtle forms of self. And here's the deal. Don't confuse more subtle with less dangerous. Deep-seated resentment doesn't feel that way like it used to, but they're just as dangerous because they're what's blocking me from God today. So I used other words to generate my first column. Who's let me down the last? I was looking at a 2-year period since I finished amends the last time. So once in a while stuff will come from the past that's revealed. Who's let me down? Who am I discouraged with? Who am I jealous of? I had 35 pages of stuff toward other people, principles, and institutions, but I stayed in the 4th column until I could rewrite the first 2, and I had 4 pages. 2 toward myself and 2 toward God. I read those 4 pages to Mark, and he said, that's the inventory. You didn't even need to read those other 35 pages. It'll help you with amends, but that was the inventory. And it's a hell of an inventory. I stay in the 4th column until I can rewrite the first 2. The first 3 columns are all lies that your ego is trying to tell you are true. And I now believe, and this has just come to me recently, I believe resentment, which we all know is anger, which is held on to, right? Refelt. I believe resentment is anger towards self that you're unwilling to face, that you project onto other people. And every one of them will come down to a resentment toward yourself or toward God. What about fear? Fear is really simple. Page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. How do you review your fears thoroughly? They're all the way through the 4th column under where you were afraid. You'll find what you think are hundreds of fears. And all of a sudden the fear inventory turns into like a NCAA 64 team final deal or a tennis tournament. Let's say you got 100 fears on your first list because they're all through the 4th column. Work with that list until you can boil them down. What is being alone really a fear of? Pain. What is drinking again really? Dying. Break down by asking yourself, okay, so first it says, we listed our fears. We ask ourselves why we had them. So I take this list of fears and I break them down. What was 50 really turns out to be about 10. And they're going to sound like negative fears. Being alone, in pain, looking bad, rejection, dying, drinking, or drinking and dying. If you can break your fears down to 10 major fears, take their opposites, because you're going to find you're just as afraid of success as failure. There's a great poem Nelson Mandela wrote that most of us are really more afraid of truth and light than we are of darkness and lies, or having power than being powerless. So I break it down to 10 fears. I take their opposites: dying, living; drinking, not drinking; being alone, being in a relationship. I take those 20 fears, I put one on the top of a piece of paper, I write 4-column inventory on fear. The only thing that changes for me with fear is self-esteem. If you write the extended 3rd column, is not about I am, it's about I can. I'm afraid of being alone, it's painful. Self-esteem, I can control pain, because fear is about self-reliance. And the 3rd column will always tell you what your ego's trying to tell you you think you can do with fear. You break those down, you see that it really comes down to 2 fears. One is about dying an alcoholic death. One is about living on a spiritual basis. One is about having power. One is about not having power. One is about living. One is about dying. The fear inventory will turn into a circle, and it'll come down to whether to die an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis. Those are my 2 fears, whatever words you put on: living, dying, having power, not having power. Sex, I was told sex is the inventory is not just about people you've had or want to have or have had sex with, because the book says we subjected each relation to this test. I ask people to pray and put the relationships that come to them on a list. I would ask you this. If you've never answered the 9 questions from the sex inventory on your relationship with yourself and God, it's an interesting thing. A woman came up to me in Denver and she said, "Is the sex inventory that you write nowadays about sex?" I said, "No, I've been celibate for a period. By choice." Guys in LA always say to me, "By choice," right? I've been celibate for a period of time. Or you're just with one person. You're in a marriage. And she said to me, "What's the most important relationship in your life?" And I had the audacity to say, "God." And you know what she said to me? "Have you ever answered the 9 questions from the book on the sex inventory about your relationship with God?" That was an eye-opener. So I just pray, show me the relationships I need to look at, make a list. My first one, it was a big thing about people I'd had or wanted to have. Or you make this list, and then you just take the first one, put it on the top of a piece of paper. We like to write a paragraph form history of that relationship, how it started, what were my motives, where did it end up, how is it now, how did it end, or how is it now, and then answer the 9 questions. There are 9 questions. And on page 69. I've always thought it was interesting that the instructions for the sex inventory are on page 69, but that's just my work. Where was I selfish? Write it out. Where was I dishonest? Write it out. Where was I inconsiderate? That's 3. Question number 4, who was hurt? You know, not only her was hurt sometimes in these kids, her mom and dad, brother. That's number 4. Number 5, where did I arouse jealousy? Number 6, where did I arouse suspicion? Number 7, where did I arouse bitterness? Where was I at fault? And what should I have done instead? Remember, it doesn't say, what could I have done instead? With the power I had, I usually did about the best I could.
I'm Mark. I'm an alcoholic. This is on. My voice carries pretty well, so I'm not going to worry about that or what I got to do, and I have to hold this up in terms of that body of work. So, everybody hear me all right? A little joke, a little levity. It's all levity when you break it down, but this guy gets on an airplane, there's an empty seat next to him, and then start walking down the aisle. It's this incredibly gorgeous woman, most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. He's saying a prayer, "My God, I hope she sits by me." Lo and behold, she sits by him. So being a typical male, the next thought is, what in God's name can I say to this incredibly beautiful woman? So he just finally turns to her and starts talking to her and says, the plane was going to Chicago. He said, "Are you going to Chicago?" You know how we are, right? Step over, yeah. He said, "Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am." And he said, "Well, what are you going to Chicago for?" And she said, "Well, I'm going to a nymphomaniac convention." He said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, I am." He started getting a little excited. He said, "Well, what do you do there?" She said, "Well, I'm one of the lecturers. We've done a lot of research, and I'm there to present a lot of unknown facts to all the women, female nymphomaniacs, who are showing up for the convention." He said, "Oh, wow, that's fascinating." He said, "Well, like what?" And she said, "Well, there's a lot of misconceptions." She said, "For example, here's one of them." She said, "There's this idea of, who's the most endowed race," and she said, "Our research shows us it's Native American." He goes, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting." And he said, well, what else?" And I said, "Well, the second thing is there's this idea that the most sensual or sophisticated kind of man is Italian." She said, "And our surveys show that isn't true, that it's really Jewish men." He said, "Wow, that's just absolutely fascinating." And she said, "And then our survey shows the third kind of man, just overall, kind of the suavest of all, is really a man from the South." He goes, "Wow, that's fascinating." She said, "Well, I'm talking way too much, and I've really, I haven't asked you a single thing about yourself. By the way, what is your name? He said, my name is Tonto Goldsmith. My friends call me Bubba. Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. So, we're going to have some fun with Theater of the Lie. It's another concept. Was incredibly helpful to me in ways that I can hardly even begin to tell you. One of my own examples was this. When I first got sober, I went to work for a company in Denver, Colorado, where I got sober. And I was with them 7 or 8 years, and I was managing retail stores 60, 70, 80-hour weeks. And unbeknownst to me, the I in me took on that as my identity. And then I resigned from that job, and about 1.5 years later, I was in one of the worst depressions of my life, and with my head saying things like, we can't do this anymore, we need to get out of here. And I didn't realize it, but it came from my identification with this career. And anyhow, I got down in Kerrville, Texas, and Joe had sent me some tapes, and I got to listen to this man do Theater of the Lie, and the light bulbs just started going off. And I said, my God, that's what that was about. I thought that job defined me. And then I'd had a couple marriages in. I went through incredible pain around that. And I'd had the same thing happen with money. And so I began to write inventory in that fashion. If I had a name show up in the first column, I would ask myself, which character? You know, there's a line in the big book as you start to read about the fifth step, and the line says that we present our stage character to the world. So the question I started to work with is, what stage character is writing this inventory? And then out of that, I began to have a lot of fun with inventory. Inventory lost its seriousness. On the one hand, it showed me what I was up against and why resentment is the #1 offender. It showed me where a lot of my suffering came from. But on the other, it allowed me to laugh at myself when I began to approach it in this fashion. One of the tools I give the clients at the ranch is, they'll come up to me and they'll say, I'm angry. And I'll say, who's angry? Almost their first couple of weeks there, some of them, their head's not even clear. I have them write out their list of characters. And I don't even explain to them why. And they'll come up and they'll say, I'm angry. Who's angry? And they'll pull up the list. Mother's angry. She can't be with her kids. And what happens is, over a period of time, even doing no work, they slowly pull away from being identified and start having fun with it. But that's some of what we did. So we want to take a couple examples. This may help. We certainly have plenty of time. I think I'll take myself first. How many other do we have any other Catholics in the room? Oh, good. I'm a Catholic, and there's been some things going on. I'm a Catholic, right? And there's been some things going on with my church that I got some thoughts and feelings about. Any of you other Catholics have any thoughts and feelings on some of this? Yeah. So I'm going to show you how my inventory laid out, and I'm going to show you my host of characters. And mostly I want you to think of it in response to, as more and more information begin to get released, I'm going to show you my own host of characters and how that began to impact me. So my column 1 would be the Catholic Church and some of the bishops and priests, all the way up to the Pope. That's who I'm angry at in the first column, right? My second column would read like this. All kinds of cover-ups from the very top all the way down about all this abuse. My money is being distributed without my consent because of all this cover-ups. My second column also is people that have provided me spiritual directions are liars. Right? There was 7, 8, or 9 more different. I'll tell you what I knew I needed to write inventory is I was pretty neutral about all of it, right? Because after all, I'm a spiritual man. And one night I'm watching, and this was about a bishop who had been covering up for years. And I just felt this thing start in me from the bottom of my toes, and I said, uh-oh, we got to write us a little inventory here. So you understand what my first and second count, the rest of you who are Catholics in here, does that seem like a pretty good fit for your you know, because over the years, and of course it'll show, what have I done? I've taken spiritual direction. I certainly have donated money. I have followed some of those practices, etc., 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 right? So for periods of time, there was this identification with that. So, first of all, who's writing that inventory? Catholic. I'm a Catholic. He's writing that inventory. There's some other characters, though, that showed up in this inventory, right? So, we'll start. I want to show you how Theater of the Lie works. You come up and stand here. And what you are is, you're the part of me that says I'm a Catholic. So your belief systems, everything, are just about being Catholic. What that means to you, what it has meant to you, how you feel about all this, etc., right? And by the way, there'll be a few other people up here. You don't know any of the rest exist. You're just, I'm a Catholic. That's your sole deal, right? Okay, now how about you come up and you stand over here. You're a spiritual man. You're a lot more evolved than the Catholic. You're on a grander scale of things, right?
And a counselor.
Yeah. So you're going to be the spiritual man, okay? Now I need, how about, what is it? Elizabeth, you be my money. My money was severely impacted by this, right? See, I'm trying to think if there were any other characters in the middle of this. You see any others, Joe, that it might have been in this?
Mr. AA?
No, not Mr. A, because the spiritual man, because AA has no opinion on this, right? So he wouldn't have been there. No, I didn't touch Rambo behind this. Well, these three, this will give you an idea. Because when we do Theater of the Lie, I'm going to take a couple of you, and this is what we're going to do. So, what I want to do is, I want to go back and there's the three of you. Your sole function's money. Your whole existence is money. And of course, what you've done over the years is you've contributed to the Catholic Church. Right? And again, you're spiritual. You're the one that says, you're the kind of guy that would say to me, Hitler did his best. You know how we use spirituality to bypass truth? It's like, we've all done that, right? Oh, they did the best they could. So did Hitler. I ain't buying it, right? That kind of thing. And so then, you know what you're the Catholic. So we're watching all this, and all this news is coming in, and all the way up a couple of archbishops, and they're lying, and they're doing cover-ups, and hundreds of millions of dollars is going out the door. How do you feel about that?
I have to cover up.
Okay, no, hold on a minute. You're a Catholic. Are we looking real good here?
No, we don't look good.
Yeah, we don't look good, right? I'm a Catholic. I am. So I'm a Catholic. These were my spiritual teachers. They're lying to me, right? They're covering up. All this money is going out the window. Maybe everything I've been taught is your very existence is being threatened here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Self-esteem, how I see and feel about myself. You're a Catholic, so all of this is going on is a direct reflection of you. Anyone ever ask you what religion you belong to, you're going to have to say that you're a Catholic, and all of a sudden you've got to take on all that, don't you? All that shame, all that guilt, right? So this is threatening your very existence, isn't it? Right? You follow? Does that make sense? And you're starting to question your existence, aren't you? How could you not? Right? These were your teachers. This has been one of your practices, correct? Right? How would you view all this stuff? all this stuff going on. What would the spiritual man say about all the stuff going on right now?
It's wrong.
No. Spiritual man has no judgments. Spiritual man just kind of floats along with the universe. Has no judgment. Huh?
It can happen to anyone.
It could happen to anyone, right? You know, they're just spiritually sick. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
One strike.
What were you saying, Joe?
Give him a couple strikes. What's
Yeah.
the big deal?
Okay. Your sole existence is money. How do you feel about what's going on? Misused, yeah. Misappropriation of funds, right? So self-esteem, how would it lay out if I wrote it? Under self-esteem, how I see and feel about myself. I am a Catholic. Lead words, I am a Catholic. I am a practicing Catholic. I'm a man of my word. I'm a man of integrity. I'm a man who would not cover up. I'm a man who would not act in this fashion. I am spiritual. That's my self-esteem.
No church should make me look bad.
Pride. No church should make me look bad. No church who has instructed me in religion should conduct themselves in this fashion. Ambition. What do I want? I want this all to stop. I want from the very top on down all the people to take ownership. I want the cover-ups to stop. I want a purging. Security. What do I need to be okay? Check this out. This was the theme. I need spiritual teachers and one of my religious practices to never make mistakes of any kind to be okay. Whoa.
Because humans should be God and God should be human.
Yeah. I need impeccable behavior on the part of spiritual leaders and teachers to be okay. Jeez. Right? Personal relations. Same-sex relations. My friends should not see men in my religion acting in this fashion. Right? Sex relations. Nothing showing up there. Money. I am my money. This was a misuse of my money. I did not donate this money to the church to be used in this fashion. Right? You see what the third column is? Understand something about the third column. In that state, my third column, I am a Catholic. The wrongdoing of others, fancy real, has the power to kill. I have several friends who have walked away. This is how powerful this stuff is if you identify with this. They have walked away from the Catholic Church behind this stuff because their identification is so strong and they are so prideful. Ultimately, we're all going to find out way down the road that this is going to be probably one of the most beneficial, revolutionary things that could have ever happened within that structure. I suspect that. I don't know. So that's my third column. You see how that third column lays out? You see what I'm up against? And then I go around places and they get to talking. And then I get to talking to this guy that I do some work with. I'm never going to Catholic Church again. This guy's going, oh no. See, he doesn't exist anymore. Right? That's when Rambo came up a little bit. Yeah, you know what? I don't think I will either. And I'm a money person. Hasn't written a check since. Not about to till they get this thing cleaned up. Right? Spiritual man, he's just ambivalent about it all. Oh, hell, let's go over and be a Baptist for a while. He's open-minded. Hell, he don't care. You know what I mean? He just kind of goes with the flow of things.
Start my own religion, open my own church.
Yeah.
Because my church will be... Yeah.
When I identified who was upset, who was resentful, my inventory just flowed. Just flowed. Now, I won't do that right now with you, but in a little bit, I call it the bridge from the third column to the fourth column. I'll show you where my fourth column showed up in this whole thing, okay? Thanks. You guys go ahead and sit down. One gentleman I was talking right there. Would you mind if I used you for Theater of the Light? Yeah. Come on up.
Amy's going to help us write on the board.
Go ahead and sit down in the chair. and I'll hand you the mic at times so you can. And we don't use names, so when he sends out 9,000 copies all over the country, no one will know it's you.
Put the number 1 below it.
Gentleman was kind enough to share a little bit of his life, and he said something to me.
No, beneath it.
He talked about, I don't know how many years ago, but he'll talk about this, is his wife basically came home and said, I want a divorce, and he talked about the provider, the homeowner, the husband, the lover, in one fell swoop, and what, 23 years later? 23 years later. Still impacted by it. Don't ever think this stuff won't kill you. 23 years later, he's still impacted. He listened to enough before, and he asked me a great question. How do I get free of this? How do I not go back and revisit that? For 23 years, this has impacted him, right? So, tell us what...
Column 1?
Column 1, of course, would be her, right? Mm-hmm. Column 1 would be the wife.
My wife.
My wife.
Next to number 1.
By the way, anytime you use the word my, you're headed for trouble. See, that's my water. You don't really want to be taking that water. See, anytime you use the word my, you see why you're in trouble? It implies ownership, possession. See? My wife, human being, means nothing. It isn't much different than my car. And anything that's my defines me. And I'll go to my death defending my stuff, right? So she's in column 1. So what would column 2 be? Okay, she wanted to divorce me. Okay, so put down, she wanted a divorce. Okay, what else? So put over at the right, put the word husband. Did you have any children?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect husband.
So did that mean she was going to take the children with her?
Yes. Perfect husband.
Okay. So we got perfect husband. You need to put father. I'm going to give you a few of them in column 2. Column 2 is lost the kids. She took the kids with them. You're going to, that's okay. Just right up here. So she took the kids. Did you have to move out of the house? Did you lose the home? Oh, man. Right over to the right. Right, homeowner. Oh, we got some inventory here.
She got the house and took the kids and wanted a divorce.
There's a country song.
Yeah, and when people ask he was doing
Play it backwards, it would have a great story.
Okay, so the other thing in column 2, you can, that's okay, you can just go a little above it, is you can put
Took the
lost the house, took the house.
Now, even though he's got 3 there, A, B, C, we would usually just do A and use the whole page, front and back.
Yeah.
Another page for B, another page for C. He's just giving you an idea of how much was going on here in this situation.
Okay, what other things in the second column maybe happened behind this? She took the kids, wanted a divorce, took the house. What else happened? Anything else? Oh yeah, we lost our mutual friends. So put up over there, friend. I also want you to put up there Romeo. He wasn't real happy with this news either. I was going to ask you if by chance, did she get involved in an affair, or was there another man?
Yeah.
Oh, second column, we have just a little bit more here. How would you word it? 23 years he's been carrying this second column around. Maybe I need to not ask him that question. Maybe you know. Yeah. Here's how to word it. Had an affair, or cheated on me.
That
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask another question. Was this with someone you knew?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I smelled that. You know what I mean?
Don't say it was someone you sponsored.
Yeah.
Best friend?
Okay.
Her boss.
Her
Okay.
boss.
Cheated on me with their boss. That's a pretty good start. You need to also write over here money, the money man. You need to write Rambo.
Mr. A. Were you sober then?
Yes.
You were
Mr.
sober then? Oh, God.
Mr.
We got.
AA.
Now, I want you to write Mr. AA, and then I want you to write spiritual man. Now, one other question. Did this have any impact on your career at that time?
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to write business person.
How many years ago was this?
How many years ago? 23?
1980.
1980. A few days have passed. Okay, good. So, we're limited on room. But, okay, we'll do this. So, let's go back. And here he is, sitting here. And all of these things that he thinks identify who he is: perfect husband, father, homeowner, friend, Romeo, that's the lover, money man, Rambo, Mr. AA, spiritual man, and businessman. When she came home and said, I want a divorce, by the way, the kids stay with me, you move out, and oh, one last thing, it's with my boss. Every one of those things that he thinks identify him had a very, very interesting reaction. So let's start with the perfect husband, okay? Because when she comes home and says, I want a divorce, y'all get what she's saying, right? So what was your reaction to that?
Well, I was upset, but I wanted to know why.
Okay.
And I was scared. And I was empty.
Okay.
Rejected.
Okay. He's talking about I'm scared, I'm empty, I'm rejected. There's always going to be two sides to every one of these will react in two ways. Let's go to self-esteem. I'm the husband, right? I'm the husband. I'm the provider. I'm the man that's cared for you. It rolls out that way. Here's the other side. I'm rejected. I'm abandoned. There's something wrong with me. But in essence, at the heart of all of it, when she said she wanted a divorce, how long had you been married? She'd been married 10 years. What she said to him is, you do not exist. You do not exist. He is fighting for his life, isn't he? So much of our identity is tied up in this.
All these characters were hurt, threatened, and interfered with.
Now that's one. Now keep in mind, just imagine a standard work day for him back there, right? The father. She's taking the kids. What's that saying to the father? You don't exist except on a part-time basis, right? Or you can be replaced. Try and imagine what he went through here literally in 24 hours. But it took a little longer to set in because they started having meetings. And they started voicing with themselves what was going on. The next one is the homeowner. You leave. I am my home. How many of you own homes? You know what I'm talking about. Have a little attachment to your home? Yeah, just a little bit. I am my home. She said, no, you're not. Go to an apartment. He doesn't exist. Friend. They had a lot of mutual friends. A whole nother identity. Now they're getting divorced. All of those gone. Almost overnight. Right? Romeo. Romeo's different from the husband. Romeo is your sexual energy. He isn't feeling too well right now either. Now, Romeo is a good term to use if you're married, but every man has within him a stud. Romeo was upset, the stud got happy. Why? Because there's fresh meat out there for him. Think about this. How many of you have ever been married and the other person had an affair on you? Okay. The wife will never cheat on the husband will never cheat on the wife. But the little sex kitten and the stud will do it in a second because they got different agendas. You follow me? We write a script of how a husband and a wife is supposed to be. I assure you, the script he had in his mind, her actions did not match any of it, which is why he's fighting for his life. Let's take another one. We got the money man. Having been divorced, I know that they can be very, very expensive. The money man is about, I'm secure, I feel secure based on the amount of money that I think I need to have in the bank or in my pocketbook. A whole bunch of it just walked out the door. He's not feeling too well. You think there's a little depression setting in by chance? Right? Rambo. Once he gets past the shock, what do you think Rambo? And then imagine Rambo when he finds out she's cheating with her boss, right? What do you think Rambo? Yeah. One objective. Period. End of statement. Kill. Penitentiary's full of men and women who Rambo decided to execute an order. Or Xena. In this situation right here. Stuff is real. So real, it's unbelievable. Mr. AA. Oh, God. Can you imagine what he brought to meetings? Can you imagine what he brought to meetings, right? And he could have been throwing out all kinds of, one-liners. And so he's sober. He's a sober member of AA. Got to come in, share pain, share what's going on. So he's doing that. Now, the spiritual man, probably started talking to him pretty quick. The spiritual man loves to use this thing of, she's spiritually sick, it'll be okay. I assure you, initially in the beginning, when they had their board meeting, the spiritual man was not listened to very much. He was a tiny little squeak. Because the rest of these had a lot to say, right? I mean, can you imagine his board meeting? The poor husband. This is before anger sets in, and then resentment. Can you imagine the poor husband? Several of these people had Kleenex. The husband, he's just sitting there, he's like that, right? And then the spiritual man probably would have called the meeting to order. That would have been the husband's reaction initially, right? What am I going to do? The father, I want you to watch how this plays out. The father would have reacted that way. The homeowner was probably starting to get real angry right away. Damn it, I put money in that home, right? The friend, he's not doing too well. Of course, Romeo. See, there's a whole other basic thing that happens here with Romeo. And that is that his entire manhood is impacted by this, isn't it? See, when she did that, she said he didn't exist. You see how real this is? The money man, he's scared to death about what's going to happen. Of course, we got Rambo just kind of stirring him up. Kill him. Get rid of him. Follow me?
You're going to bring them up and ask each of them how they felt in this situation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The businessman, because of all the things going on with everything else, he doesn't have much energy left to take into work, does he? So the businessman all of a sudden can't perform his job. Now all of a sudden, look what he's up against. You see what he's up against? So let's just do this. Yeah, and you can do this where you're sitting. How shall I have it worded? Shall I have him just ask him how he responded once they found all this out?
How did the perfect father feel?
We'll start. You're the perfect husband. You have just found out all this information. What is your response? How do you experience this?
Can't believe it's happening.
Yeah, can't believe it's happening. What else?
Pride, hurt feelings.
Pride, hurt feelings, rejection, abandonment, failure, all that stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. So next gentleman, you would be the father. What kind of reaction would you have?
Couldn't believe that happened to me after a good father got dead.
Yeah. I'm going to miss my kids.
Rejection, lack of manhood.
The kids are going to be screwed up, right? As they get older.
The kid.
Exactly. Okay. The homeowner. You're the homeowner. What kind of reaction? You've got to move into an apartment.
Security,
Yeah.
time invested in the house.
Yeah. A house becomes a part of you. It becomes comfortable, right? Now I got to go live in an apartment complex. I hear people going to the bathroom and, right? Follow me? And part of your image gets tied up into your home, right? So you're not too happy about this stuff, right? Okay, Romeo. Now this is the part of you is about your sexual energy in a marriage. And basically, not only is she leaving, but then you find out she cheated on you. What's your reaction to this? Bingo, do you hear that? I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Carries it for 23 years because he's identified with this. I'm not good enough, right?
The ego wins either way. High self-esteem or low self-esteem, the ego wins either way.
Yep.
The ego loves it. I'm no good or I'm the greatest. It will never admit I'm an average guy with this much sobriety trying to do the best I can who makes mistakes. It won't settle for the middle.
Yep. You be the money woman. Of course, there's a lot of money going on at the table there, aren't there? Right. What's your reaction to all this?
Wiped down,
Yeah.
angry.
Angry, fear, tremendously afraid, right? What's going to happen? Rambo, what's your reaction?
Kill.
Yeah. Kill, maim, and destroy. That's pretty well it.
Fix them.
Yeah, that's about the only thing on his agenda. Lock and load. Not much else going on. Right? Just not much else going on. Of course, then you got, spiritual woman, right? Spiritual man. What's your reaction to all this going to be? Thy will be done. See,
God's will.
it's God's will. Right? I mean, I want you to understand what this poor man's been going through. All of this has been happening to him for 23 years, and initially, can you imagine the intensity of it? All at the same time. That's why the book says, in that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancy to realize the power to kill. Can you imagine what he must have been experiencing? Can you imagine? And then 23 years later, obviously based on his comments, he is still revisiting. These people, these states of identity are still alive and well in him. 23 years later. Look what it's done to his life in 23 years. Follow? You see what it's done? And then we see what the businessman is. Now you see how this lays out? Can you imagine? If you look at the second column, you can imagine what the third column looks like, can't you? Writing out his third column. See, here's what Theater of the Lie did for me. Just what little we've done. Do you see where the third column would roll out? Pride. No one should ever see a woman leave me. Boom, 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 boom. Fill in all the blanks. Self-esteem. I'm a failure. It goes two ways, low or high. I'm a failure. I'm a good husband. You got the whole chain of events. I'm a good provider. I'm a poor provider. I'm a good lover. I'm a poor lover. You got both, right? Ambition. What did you want?
I wanted a nice house with a picket fence and 2 kids and a cat.
There you go. Do you hear that? Wanted a white house, picket fence, a cat, a dog, a couple kids, and a little wifey too. If my arrangements would only stay put. If only people would do as I wish, the show would be great. I have a belief system I'll be happy and satisfied if my life only goes according to my plan.
And security, the biggest lie of all. I need her to stay, to exist, to be okay. Without her, I'm nothing. Look what the ego's done.
Yeah.
Sex relations.
Yes, exactly.
Women don't leave men. Men leave women. Right.
Or sex relations, women are not to be trusted.
Pocketbook. Nobody leaving me should affect my money. Keep in mind, don't let this confuse you with A, B, C, and D. We took 4 resentments in the second column, but really it should just be 1, and then another page for the other one. Got the kids, another page for the house, another page for the affair. 1 page per resentment. This will show you why you're having trouble with personal relationships when you're not at 1. Remember, this is when you're not at 1. This is when you're mad, you're angry, you're resentful because she left. And you know why you're having trouble when you're not at 1?
That's good.
One morning, the lover wakes up to her businesswoman because she's got as many personalities as he does when she's not at 1. She's pissed too. She's about to leave. So one morning, Romeo wakes up to the businesswoman. She's got an 8 o'clock appointment. He wants to make love. There's a problem there. Next morning, his businessman wakes up to Juliet, the sex kitten. There's a problem there when you're not at 1. Depends on who wakes up. The only time you have a good day is when the right 2 personalities wake up at the same time. Right? Then you find not only do you have these different personalities, every one of them has a different belief system about when she left. Rambo wants to kill. Mr. AA needs to accept it. No, acceptance is the answer to all my problems. This is not acceptable. Acceptance is not the answer. I do the work because being powerless over alcohol and my life being unmanageable became unacceptable for the first time in my life. We need acceptance for people, places, and things, but step 1 is not acceptable to me. Dr. Paul cried when I talked to him and he talked about what people did with that page 449 in relationship to themselves in the first step. We need it for people, places, and things. But I think we're all here to do the work because being powerless and being unmanageable has become absolutely unacceptable. So that's another reason they're having trouble with personal relationships. Every one of their personalities have a different belief system. And you wonder why there's mixed feelings. There's mixed feelings because there's mixed personalities. Rambo wants to kill. The spiritual guy wants to live and let live. You know, the businessman is concerned about his next appointment and his meeting and his money and his house. And you're having trouble. Mm-hmm. He told us a story. Frank told us a story when he shared this with us about a man who became an AA speaker, who would never say no to an AA request. Went to the doctor one day. The doctor says, "Be at the hospital tomorrow. You have appendicitis." He became an AA speaker. He couldn't go to the hospital. He had to go speak. He had a commitment he couldn't say no to. Went to speak. At the podium, his appendix burst. Back then, they couldn't treat peritonitis. You go to the hospital and you're going to die. It took him 17 days. Frank would go to see him, and when he was lucid, he would begin to admit, "You know, I wasn't the greatest father in the world, but I wasn't the worst either." And another personality would die. "I wasn't the greatest husband in the world, but I wasn't the worst." And another personality would die. We're here for these to be smashed, for these to become at 1, to atone. That's what amends are about. Amends are about getting free of these different personalities and coming back to your center. It took him 17 days to die, and he died free. We get to do that right here, and we get to do it in the inventory process. We don't have to die for these personalities to be smashed. But there's a couple things you have to watch out for when you start to move into the truth, which is the next column.
If you open your book 266, to dovetail on what Joe said, our goal in AA is to die before we die. The paragraph that says, "It's plain that a life which includes deep resentment will lead only to futility and unhappiness." The reason our deep resentments lead to futility is, can you do anything about another person's behavior or choices? Then it's futile, isn't it? And the unhappiness generated from that. To the precise extent that I permit these, that's an interesting word. The term permit here is very important. It's in there because you and I have been given a way to get free of them. If you're unwilling to take the action of writing the inventory, then you're going to be victim of it.
It also says in the book, that to conclude that she was wrong was as far as we usually got. The first 3 columns was as far as we usually get. What happens? They continue to wrong us and we stay angry.
Yep. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance growth of his spiritual experience, his business resentment is infinitely grave. Matter of fact, it's fatal.
Do I believe that?
For when I harbor these feelings, I shut myself off from the sunlight of the Spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and I drink again. With me, to drink is to die.
Do I believe that?
For those of you that have relapse history, go back and see if those last 4 sentences don't describe every relapse that's happened to you. If I'm to live, I had to be free of anger. Doesn't say you won't get angry. It says you got to be free of it. The grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for me these things are poison. Now again, this next sentence, by the way, I'll throw out something to you. There's 4 or 5 sentences in this book that are so profound to me that you will never hear talked about in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. So what I'll throw out to you is start bringing them up in meetings. This next sentence